It says we're live. Hello, hello. It's 4 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock. No, is it 3 o'clock Pacific? I don't know what time it is Pacific. I'm still confused by that.
4.
At 4 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Central here in Costa Rica, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, midnight in Dublin, 1 a.m. in London, Milan, most of Europe, 8:30 and 9:30 a.m. Wednesday morning in Australia, 9:30 in New Zealand, Wednesday morning, and it's Facebook Live. Hello, hello. It's really great to be with you. And I have my good friend, Dr. Kara Fitzgerald with us today. Hi, Dr. Fitzgerald.
Hi there. Good to be with you, Dr. O'Brien.
Really great to have you. We've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm glad it worked out. And it's going to be a great informative hour here and with Dr. Kara's specialty, which is how do we age and how can we, the term that I like to use is graceful aging versus anti-aging. My opinion, there's no such thing as anti-aging. Everybody ages, you know, that's what we get being human. But how do you age with grace and full function, as much function as possible? And that's what we're going to talk about. But before we do that, which is really great information, and it's going to be fun, I want to tell you that we're making a change at theDr.com in terms of our clinical services. That there's an article that came out first in the Journal of the American Medical Association from Dr. Fitzgerald and I's friends, Mark Hyman and Patrick Hanaway, working at Cleveland Clinic. That article came out a couple of years ago where they compared thousands of patients who went through the Functional Medicine Center at Cleveland Clinic and thousands of patients who went through the Family Medicine Center at Cleveland Clinic. And they compared the outcomes. And although almost everyone got better to some degree, the people in the functional medicine community got much, much better in areas that they didn't think they'd be able to see changes in. So their quality of life is the term that they were measuring. The quality of life was much higher. The researcher said significant differences. And that's a big word to use when you're publishing on research, is significant differences. The second paper that came out just earlier this year in the British Medical Journal looked at people going to Cleveland Clinic's Functional Medicine Center who went through and they saw their functional medicine practitioner and the nutritionist. And then people who went to the Functional Medicine Center at Cleveland Clinic and they saw their functional medicine practitioner and their nutritionist, and they went to group sessions. And the people who went to group sessions, once again, had significant improvements even over those that went through functional medicine. And the concept of group sessions, we instituted that at the Institute for Functional Medicine in our coursework a number of years ago when we started doing round tables. So instead of big long tables where everybody sits, you know, at big long tables facing the front of the room, we put round tables together of usually 8 doctors or participants at a time. And there were exercises regularly during the day where they're answering questions or talking about what they think on a particular topic. And Dr. Fitzgerald, didn't we see just dramatic changes in group participation when we did that?
Oh yeah, without question.
Yeah, it made a huge difference. So what we're doing at theDr.com is group sessions. And because people realize that they're not alone dealing with what they're dealing with, whatever it is. And when you're in a small group online, when you're in a small group, you get empowered by the struggles that somebody else is having. You know, this is the Christmas season right now, and I sent out a Christmas greeting to everyone. And I acknowledged in my Christmas greeting, I used to talk about this for years, that the hardest thing for me to do in going gluten-free was to give up my mother's Christmas cookies. And it took me 8 years before I stopped eating her Christmas cookies. You know, I would be squeaky clean, gluten-free all year. But when we go back to my folks' home with the family, you know, those cookies, I just grew up on those. And it was such, and so many people would write in and say, oh, I'm so glad to hear that you had a hard time with that, because I've had a hard time with ... And the result is people feel empowered. So we're going to put a link here for you for the group session concept. It's theDr.com/heal community. And you will see what we're structuring for everyone in terms of community-based healing. So with all of that done, now let's get to tonight.
Yeah, well, you know what? I want to just piggyback off that, Tom, and say
Sure.
that if there was one component of the study that I would have added, and I know you're going to give all that background, so I should probably not. I just want to say this while it's fresh. It would have been a community element. So I deeply appreciate what you're saying. And so you can go ahead and go into your intro, but I mean, Cleveland Clinic did a beautiful job demonstrating it. I appreciate that you're embracing it. We certainly are here in our clinic, and we just can't underscore enough the importance of that community connection in the healing journey.
Since you've implemented the group session concept in your own clinic, what kind of differences have you seen in your patients?
You know, I want to say that we've used a model like this really from the get-go, because we've got a large virtual footprint, and we opened up our clinic, our virtual clinic doors, not just to patients, but to practitioners as well. And so we've got a beautiful community. In fact, just before I came onto this Facebook Live with you, we had our annual Zoom sit down, sort of connect and share what we're grateful for. So we just opened it up to our full community, just our community. We didn't go beyond those people who are part of us, and did a roundtable on what we're feeling grateful for. And without question, for both providers and patients, it's the connection. Everyone talked about it over and over again. We need it as physicians as well, to be able to practice the best medicine. Yes. We absolutely need to be in contact and dialoguing openly, honestly with other providers, helping us weed through the tons of science, helping us, you know, stay abreast of all the latest interventions, the latest labs, and, you know, just working through complex cases. I mean, that support environment across the board in medicine is essential. And I think just the way of the future. I will say a lot of the providers in our practice said, especially those coming from the mainstream medical model, said that, you know, how grateful they are for this, but how nobody else has it. You know, it's such a rare thing. So one of the changes I would like to see, you know, with patients, you're doing it, we're doing it, but also just the provider space, continue to expand and offer that.
You bet, you bet. Doctors need to talk to other doctors about where their struggles are, to learn new techniques, new concepts, and thinking about complicated cases. But when there's more support for a community environment, people don't feel so embarrassed to say, well, I don't know about that.
That's right. That's right. Or embarrassed to say, I had my mom's cookies, you know, and I know I shouldn't, right? It's just, whatever it is, it's all safe. It's all fair.
You're right. You know, and
I've heard that story from you before. It's actually really funny to hear it again. It's good. It's a good story.
I still miss my mother's cookies. I miss them. You know, she would make, I don't know, 10, 15 different types of little cookies. You know, I'll just have one. And when you have one, it's down the rabbit hole, you know, that you don't stop.
But it was a real passion project for her, obviously, if she made 15 different types. That's amazing. That's
exactly right. Exactly right. So let me tell you about my friend, Dr. Kara Fitzgerald. She's the first ever recipient of the Emerging Leadership Award from the Personal Lifestyle Medicine Institute in recognition of her work on DNA methylation. And we're going to talk a little about what that is tonight. As a leading voice in the intersection of nutrition, epigenetics, and aging, Dr. Fitzgerald's work has been featured in media outlets such as Prevention, Fast Company, MSN, Everyday Health, and many more. Receiving her doctorate from National University of Natural Medicine, she's on the faculty of the Institute of Functional Medicine and is an IFM certified practitioner with a clinical practice in Newton, Connecticut. She lives with her daughter in Connecticut, and here she is. And it's so great to finally be doing this with you. Thanks, Dr. Kara, for being here.
Sure.
And I usually start off with some shout outs to people. And so let me begin by saying hello to Jillian from Cleveland, and Kathy's here from Kentucky. Merry Christmas to you too, Kat. Janice in North Carolina, Shanquila says, oh, she's got her, Shanquila always has such great questions. And so she goes right to it. Hello, I've heard POTS is a vagal nerve issue. Do you have any advice on what to do for this? Also just got E3 Advanced Plus, and when should I use it? Thanks. Well, I'll take the second part, but I'll let Dr. Kara start with the first part on how do you think about POTS?
Well, it's a collection of symptoms. It's a symptom which we need to spend some energy around discovering root cause. So you have to do a full tilt root cause analysis on POTS. So I would say a classic presentation of someone, I can give you a timeline of a classic, I ended up with POTS case. There tends to be a little bit of an allergic bias. That's been my observation. So maybe in childhood, they had childhood allergies or seasonal allergies. Maybe. I don't think that you need to, but there's some original piece. And then there's additional stressors, usually in the form of medication. So some sort of a microbiome disruption. This can be a series of antibiotics, maybe they had some traveler's diarrhea. I mean, it could be relatively innocuous, needed some antibiotics, disrupted the microbiome. And then you start to see the allergies increase. You see a movement into sort of a mast cell activation. You see a loss of tolerance to foods often containing histamine, but it can even go beyond that. I mean, they can really become reactive to many different things. You'll see hives. If you measure blood histamine or another enzyme called tryptase, you might see those higher. And along with that, not the end result, but a common complaint is POTS. And so you really have to kind of tease it out. You've got to move through the riddle, and you have to start with, rebuilding where the imbalance is. They may need to be on a relatively restrictive diet, and they may need some nutrients to support the symptoms, or even some medications for a period of time. While you're doing the underlying rebuilding, but we can definitely do it. I mean, functional medicine is well positioned to dealing with, MCAS conditions, and POTS usually falls under that heading.
Yeah, right. POTS is postural orthostatic hypotension syndrome. It means when you stand up, you get dizzy. And there are so many triggers that can cause that. And as Dr. Kara said, you've got to go through the functional medicine analysis to figure out why is this person reacting to this. But when I came out in practice in 1980, we opened on Valentine's Day in 1980, and yes, I'm dating myself now. But it was one of the first things we looked for was orthostatic hypotension. Every new patient, we do their blood pressure sitting, and then we leave the cuff on and we have them stand up, and then we do the blood pressure again. And the higher number, the first number, the systolic, should go up 3 to 5 points when you stand up. Now, when it doesn't, and sometimes it drops, that's when you start to get dizzy, is if your blood pressure drops when you stand up. That's why you get lightheaded. Now, how does that happen? When you stand up, gravity pulls blood down. Now, the brain has to have a constant supply of blood. So you stand up, but gravity's pulling blood down. The brain sends a message down the vagal nerve. So you're right on that, Shanquila. It sends a message down to the adrenal glands and says, I need blood, I need it now. And the adrenal glands, they have a little bit of adrenaline in storage. And so as soon as that nerve message comes, they shoot out a little adrenaline into the bloodstream. It's already made. And as soon as that adrenaline hits the blood vessel constricts. It's like stepping on a garden hose. There's a squirt of water that comes out at the end when you step on a garden hose, right? So when you do that, when the blood vessel constricts, your blood pressure goes up a couple of points. So you start to stand up, gravity pulls blood down, the brain sends the message, I need blood now, to the adrenal glands, the glands designed to handle stress. The adrenal glands secrete adrenaline, the blood vessel constricts, the blood pressure goes up, and you never get dizzy. But if your adrenal glands are functioning sluggishly and they don't respond very well, they go, oh, hold on. You know, I've been working really hard for all the stress you give me in this life that we live together. Hold on. And so they don't quite secrete the adrenaline out there, and you stand up, you get dizzy. So back before functional medicine and all of the knowledge of how to look for why is all this happening, we knew about this functional problem with the adrenal glands. And that's where the term hypoadrenia came from back in the 80s. And so many doctors were talking about hypoadrenia, which is just another symptom. It's a system of your body, your adrenal glands, that just aren't working very well anymore. They're kind of worn out. Well, the question is, why are they worn out? So now we know so much more about that we look deeper to see where is it coming from. So Shanquila, to your question, you've got to take a really good history, and that's why we use a living matrix, really good history. And then you determine from your history, where should I likely start looking with this patient as to what's going on for them? And that's how you get into examining, all right, it could be this, or this, but this is most likely, let's check this first. Might be heavy metals, might be food sensitivities. There are many different things it could be. And that's when the whole world of functional analysis comes in.
That's actually good. So yes, there's definitely quite a few possibilities. I will say that we are seeing POTS more and more in as a common finding in mast cell activation.
Right.
And in fact, I was just talking to Dan Lucasey about such a case this morning because we have our immune module coming up. So we'll be discussing POTS and other issues.
Got it. Oh, that's really it's right on the tip of our brains. Heather says, awesome, you're here. Lucia says, I backed everything gluten-free for Christmas already. Way to go, Lucia, way to go. I see the link is there for Heal Community for you folks to take a look at it. Laura's here from Southern Oregon, our own Laura. Hey, Laura, nice to see you're here. Thank you. Ninha is here from Brazil. Hello, Ninha. What time is it in Brazil? Tell us what the time is. I'm always interested to know what the time is.
I noticed that. You've got
Majin is here from New Zealand. New Zealand's in the house. Thank you so much. Anne's here from Seattle. Brenda's in Kentucky. Colin's here from Bridlington, England. Thank you all from all over the world for being here. Now let's get to it with Dr. Kara. Now I will say hello to more people as we go along. So Dr. Kara, we've known for years, and it's part of the motivation for me and why we do what we do, that for the first time in the history of humans, for the very first time about 9 or 10 years ago, children born then had a shorter projected lifespan than their parents. For the first time in history, children were projected to live shorter lives than the lives that their parents lived. Now, and we've got so much more information than ever before about that. Can you talk to us as to what's the direction that our lifespan is going currently? And then we'll talk about how do you look at the big picture?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and it's a little bit nuanced. So clearly the chronic diseases of aging are impacting us profoundly. So cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, and so forth. Those are dropping our life expectancy. But I want to add to that we need to expand our thinking. So lifespan is an inadequate reference. Living a long time, living 80 years or so, or 80 plus years, 90 years, means nothing if we don't have quality of life. And so what we know in this country is that the final 16 years are spent sick. I mean, this is really disturbing to me. The final 16 years of the majority of Americans are spent with at least 2 significant diseases and multiple medications. And so for me, you know, I'm a mom. I'm actually a first-time mom. I'm 54. My daughter will be 4 soon. I'm an older first-time mom, and I want to be around a long time, as healthy as possible. It's just so important. And when I think about
my son, excuse me, I've got to tell you, my son is 1 next week, and I'm 70. So I'm right with you.
Right. There you go. Fist bump, fist bump. Yeah, you want it. You've got this deep, deep motivation to stay well for a really long time. And I would not have guessed you were 70, by the way. So hats off. So the other piece is that skilled nursing facilities, the hospital, big pharma, they get our money. I mean, how many people you know that turn their home over to they sign over the rights to their home to whatever care facility they're going to be with, or so they have access to health care and medical care, and they're propped up in a skilled nursing facility, maybe on a ventilator, you know, maintained on medication. They're not cognitively present. I mean, it's a soapbox issue for me how horrible that is. So all of our hard-earned money, and I'm thinking again about my daughter, she gets that. I want her to be the beneficiary of my hard work in this lifetime. I don't want to be forking it over to, you know, $1 trillion industry that's bankrupting not just our country, but countries around the world. So we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our offspring, to our family, to our friends, to the care providers that may have to tend to us if we get dementia. We owe it to everyone to really think about optimizing not just lifespan, but health span.
Yes. Really good point. Really good differentiation is quality of life. You know, and I remember there was a paper that came out, British Medical Journal in 2004, the Polypill, reducing cardiovascular disease by over 78%. And it was a study that looked at a number of other studies, and they said, if we put a pill together that had these 6 medicines in it, well, 5 medicines and folic acid, if we put this pill together and everybody took it, we could reduce cardiovascular disease by 78%. And you know, that was, it was on the front page of every paper in the country at the time because they've got really good marketing departments. 8 months later, the paper comes out in the British Medical Journal, the Polymeal, a healthier alternative to the Polypill, reducing cardiovascular disease by 74%. And they use the same logic to say that if we ate this way, we would reduce our risk of cardiovascular disease by 74%.
Yeah.
And it was fish 3 times a week, a handful of almonds every day, a little bit of fresh garlic every day, just about a pound of vegetables a day, 400 grams of vegetables a day. And if we ate like that, and a glass of wine, red wine every day, if we ate like that, we'd reduce our risk by 74%. So we've known for years and years and years about our food choices and how it can make a difference. My question for you, Dr. Kara, is that our science has improved so much from the early 2000s. Do we now know as an individual, because of our genetics, what foods we should be focusing on more than others?
Well, I mean, I guess what I can say is to an extent. I mean, in thinking about our study, we were, I guess, so I'm going to say a couple of things and then you're just going to have to ask questions, but I just want to kind of get out there what we actually looked at and what we started to answer. So we wanted to see today, recently, actually, since in 2013, a gold standard test was developed for measuring our biological age. So our chronological age is the amount of time we've been on the planet. Our biological age is our physiologic wear and tear, what age that equates to. And we haven't been able to measure biological age until recently, at least reliably. And the way that we've done that is by not looking at the genes themselves, but actually looking at which genes are on and which genes are off, and specifically by DNA methylation. So DNA methylation it's what we call an epigenetic mark, epi above, genetic gene. And it's one way that we regulate which genes are on and which genes are on and off. And it turns out that we can predict age from in utero, which would be a negative age because you haven't been born yet, up to centenarians with almost a correlation of 1-to-1. There's like 0.96 is the correlation. So we can look at people's gene expression and say, this is how old you are. But it's within that little wiggle room that biological age exists. And that's where we can, through our diet and lifestyle choices, actually turn back the hands of time, and in some case, turn back the hands of time considerably. So in our study, we specifically wanted to look at what would address gene expression, what would address DNA methylation, with the outcome being younger biological age, but we also wanted to see certain genes associated with diseases like cancer. Were we able to turn these genes on or off, et cetera? And so that was our fundamental question. At the time of our study, there were no studies out there showing that biological age could be reversed. And in fact, the guy who developed the biological age clock, Steve Horvath out of UCLA, didn't think diet and lifestyle could be impactful on biological age. Very modestly was their read on the literature. They were looking at actually their analysis. They were looking at like N. Haynes database, Framingham database, and so forth, and these huge study populations, and seeing kind of a modest impact in diet and lifestyle, like on biological age. But in 2019, the first study came out, very small, just 9 men, no control group, that showed a convincing reversal of biological age using 1 year of growth hormone injections. And it was called the TRIM study. That was the first. It made the news, the scientific news, like big. It was in journal Nature. Like they did a it was published in Aging Cell, and then Nature wrote it up, and a whole bunch. It just got a ton of attention because it was the first time they showed a biologically younger outcome. But it was aggressive. They used growth hormone injections. They took metformin, DHEA, zinc, and I think vitamin D is what they did for a full year. Our study was shortly thereafter. We published in 2021, and it was the 4th study, I think, at the time, but it was the first to be a randomized control study, and it was also the first to use a diet and lifestyle intervention in 8 weeks, so not a year-long intervention, but in 8 weeks' time, looking at diet and lifestyle specifically, we showed a over 3-year reduction as compared to our control group.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
You just said with diet and lifestyle, you demonstrated that within 8 weeks, there was a 3-year reversal
of biological age. Yeah.
Within 8 weeks.
Yeah. Needless to say, Tom, it got a lot of attention. It's gotten a lot of attention, just kind of a mind-blowing amount of attention. So just the 4th study out showing any biological age reversal, the first controlled study, and by far the shortest duration. And we were basically using, functional medicine, integrative medicine. In fact, my friend Tina Kaiser, who's a naturopathic physician, said, geez, Kara, I looked at the diet and it's old school nature medicine, So it was something that's familiar to all of us in this field. We just put it together in this, total package. It was a diet and lifestyle intervention, and we were really thinking about DNA methylation, and so we packed it with nutrients that I can talk about that we know, or at least we suspect will favorably influence DNA methylation, and our suspicions turned out to be correct based on our study findings.
Now, when you say you packed it with nutrients, do you mean vitamin supplements or foods?
Food. Yeah, we really wanted to lean on whole foods. I think that the combination of many, many, many different micronutrients that a whole foods diet can expose us to multiple times a day, not just us and our bodies, but also our microbiomes. So the exposure of a whole foods diet, plus the lifestyle pieces, those lifestyle pieces are very important as well. Changed gene expression towards a biologically younger phenotype.
Can you talk about the foods that you included in that 8-week program?
Yeah, so there's two arms of the foods. We know, I'm sure you've talked about with your people that that methyl donors as a group are really important. Methyl donors are folate, B12, betaine, choline, all of the things that provide a methyl group, a carbon and 3 hydrogen, and then will go and act in these methyltransferase enzymes. Methylation is happening in every cell of the body, really all of the time. And it's happening a lot in as far as gene regulation goes. So there's DNA methylation, which we focused on, but there's histone methylation and mitochondrial DNA methylation and so on and so forth. So methyl donors and methylation, supporting methylation is essential because methylation kind of wonks out as we get older. Classically, it's not, our methylation cycle and our ability to methylate is not as good when we get older.
So if I can just take a moment to interpret.
Yeah. Yes.
So methyl donors, what she's talking about are foods that have components in them that will help your body methylate, mean to detox or to turn certain genes on. So we'll get to what the foods are. You don't have to try to remember methyl donors and what that means, but rather it's a category that is within a lot of different foods.
Yes. Yes. And do you want me to just give you some of those foods now, or jump into the second? So these foods, folks, them. These are the leafy greens. These are your cruciferous. These are seeds, nuts, mushrooms like shiitake mushrooms, beets. If you're open to it, liver is a multivitamin in a food matrix. I know a lot of people are like, squeamish with liver, but if you can get clean source liver and figure out how to prepare it, it is a superfood. I have to be honest and say that more often than not, my liver is just encapsulated New Zealand, really pure liver because I'm not a fan of cooking it myself, but I appreciate how important it is. So these, did I say eggs? Eggs are another methyl donor superfood. If you're vegan, there's alternatives. Of course, you can lean on beans and so forth. We do have, beyond liver and eggs, we do recommend some animal protein. It's not a dominant animal protein based diet, but we do want you to be able to get some of those all important amino acids that support methylation as well. So a little bit of clean source chicken, or super fatty clean source fish, that kind of thing. You should have some every day, a little bit every day. Mm-hmm. That's the methyl donor arm. Yeah.
There's a question that came in that's really a good one from Priscilla. With slow COMT1, I have to avoid methyls. How do I circumvent this group and still achieve detoxification?
Priscilla, that is a really good question. So of course, in my practice, I see a lot of people who come to me with different SNPs and methyltransferase enzymes. So catechol methyltransferase classically both helps make adrenaline as well as metabolize it. And folks with the COMT variants can just do horribly with B12 and folate. I have never, in my experience working with many patients with COMT and other mutations, had them have an issue with food-sourced methyl donors. I would guess, Priscilla, that you can handle greens. You can probably do pretty well with beets. You may be able to handle eggs. I would say that a well-designed program would be able to supply you with methyl donors that don't stimulate COMT.
Marvelous. Thank you for that answer. I'm sure that gives Priscilla a sigh of relief. The second phase of your study, the other part.
Okay, so we want to load up with methyl donors. So we need to move methylation forward, support methylation happening, but we want to direct it. We want to direct where and how it's happening. This is so important. This was a massive aha. In fact, the reason that I got into this line of research, it's a career changer for me, Tom. Like, my work will never be the same. It's crazy how much my life has changed. But it was around 2013, and I was reading the science on epigenetics, on gene expression, and the research was mostly happening in oncology, cancer. The cancer tumor microenvironment will take over our gene expression and turn genes on and off for its own growth. It will turn off tumor suppressor genes. The genes in our body that take care of cancer, that keep us protected from cancer, when we have cancer, the cancer will shut these genes down. It will turn on genes that we call oncogenes, so genes that push cancer forward. So cancer, the disease, actually goes in and wreaks havoc on DNA methylation. And that stopped me in my tracks, because I started to wonder, well, if I'm prescribing a lot of high dose folate, if I'm prescribing a lot of high dose B12, et cetera, do I need to begin to nuance how I do this? And also too, what about my patients like Priscilla, who absolutely can't tolerate B12, but really need it? Their body clearly needs it. And so it was with this in mind that I designed the diet. And as we were in the literature around it, as we were looking at the science, we began to see a lot of cell studies, some animal studies, talking about polyphenols. So things like curcumin and turmeric, or EGCG and green tea, rosmarinic acid and rosemary, luteolin, lutein, all of those beautiful polyphenols we know and love, resveratrol, and on and on and on. So these important plant compounds seem to have the ability to direct where methyl donors are being laid down on our genes. They seem to be able to direct which genes get turned on and which genes get turned off. So you have the methyl donor here, and then maybe this polyphenol is just like pushing it around. There's like a really, and go here, and then there's another one. And so you're turning off genes you want off, and it looks like it's maybe supporting genes that we want on to be turned on. And a lot of this science, and I cover it in my book, there's a cool table in there, is around cancer and specifically tumor suppressor genes. And so we see that sulforaphane, diindolylmethane, resveratrol, green tea, curcumin, and on, these compounds we want all the time, actually work, they're anti-cancer because they help turn on previously hypermethylated and shut down tumor suppressor genes. So it's kind of complex. I hope that makes sense. I want to add one more thing before you jump in, Tom, and that is that aging itself shows up on the epigenome with, shows up in DNA methylation patterns very similar to cancer. So as we age, we shut down our tumor suppressor genes. As we age, we turn on our methylation genes. I mean, our inflammation genes. I mean, it's kind of crazy and disturbing, but the the diseases of aging sort of have a similar genetic presentation as to aging itself. And so then that made sense for us to think about addressing aging. And if we could successfully make a change there, we would by extension be addressing the chronic diseases of aging.
With this information about the foods that everyone's heard about before, there's no new superfood here that you're hearing about. So the first step is to include more of these foods in every meal.
Yeah, every meal.
There shouldn't be a meal. I don't care if it's breakfast. There shouldn't be a meal that doesn't have the colors of the rainbow in it.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Every meal. And that's a first step.
Yes.
After you've done that first step, have you talked with your patients or addressed the concept of, well, for example, some people talk about beets as being a superfood and using dehydrated beet powder in smoothies. Is that something that's pretty far out there, or is that a more, and along with it, the same concept in terms of you eating cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, growing your own broccoli sprouts are much higher in sulforaphanes. So do those concepts, is that taking it to the next level of a little more support for this whole concept of enhancing our methylation, our DNA methylation?
I think it certainly could be. We didn't have people use, a dehydrated beet powder, or we didn't have them grow broccoli sprouts. It was a big intervention as it was. And so we had to be careful about what we were asking our participants to do. There were a lot of things that they had to do. However, I do think, yes, it stands to reason that broccoli sprouts would be amazing. And for folks who don't want to eat beets, you could lean on beet, on a dehydrated beet powder or fermented beet powder. There's a lot of really great ways to access beets. And so for sure we do. I want to say that on that note, because anyone I talk to, and you're obviously you can think really big picture. It's easy to design where our next study is going to be. And we do have a digital platform. We have an app that we've built, and we've gotten institutional review board approval to continue to research what we're doing. And we'll have people participating with us from wherever in the world they want to. And we're not telling them to change their supplement protocols, but we'll be paying attention to what's working and what it's doing, and really thinking about what we might layer in as our next intervention to really support biological age. So we have our core study that people can continue to jump onto and sort of start as their foundational piece. And then we'll be really looking at sort of the next generation, younger you, if you will. So it's exciting. Yeah, it is. It's really exciting.
So that's on the foods.
Yeah.
What were the other lifestyle pieces that you included in the study?
So another big aha for me in this was that we in functional medicine have the methylation and sulfuration cycles memorized. I mean, I bet a lot of people listening to us, Priscilla knows the COMT enzyme. That's not in the outside world. Like, we're sort of a rarefied bunch of people who are thinking about stuff. So a lot of us have an idea about the methylation cycle. Well, it turns out that there are many, many, many other variables that have nothing to do with the methylation cycle directly that influence potently methylation, and in particular DNA methylation. And so we wanted those pieces in our study as well. The first one is exercise. Exercise can turn back on those all-important tumor suppressor genes as effective as a polyphenol, as resveratrol. Isn't that crazy? It's so cool. And the older we are, so you and I can listen to this, the older we are, the more bang for our buck that we actually get with exercise in terms of turning on genes that we want on and turning off genes that we want off. So exercise is incredibly important in regulating gene expression. And it's not couched to CrossFit. It's a consistent habit that works for you. We prescribed a very modest 5 days a week, minimum of a half an hour 60 to 80% perceived exertion. So we weren't asking our participants to go to the CrossFit gym and break themselves up into pieces. In fact, there's some evidence that that may be excessive and actually pro-aging.
Right.
Anybody who has ever performed at that level, I used to be a competitive athlete. I know, after your season, you get really sick. Everyone gets sick. It's kind of crazy, right? I used to get a sinus infection after my biking season. So just 30 minutes, 5 days a week at a minimum of a half an hour, 60% to 80%. So I can carry on a conversation. I might be a little bit sweaty. I might be puffing a little bit, but it's not too crazy.
So for most people, walking would do that.
Perfectly. Yeah. Walking would, and a lot of our participants actually did start to walk. A couple of guys walked to work and back, and walking would, but you know what? You can do whatever you like. I mean, there's even research out there on house cleaning, which I find surprising. I would not volunteer for that study myself, but anyway,
Well,
some people would.
That's not one that I'd get dressed up for in workout clothes and go to.
Right. So exercise is a hugely important thing, the value of which is, it's just so unequivocal in the science. The next thing is sleep.
Yeah.
If we're not sleeping, if we are not adequately sleeping at night, it is pro-aging, period. I mean, the science is really clear in animals and as well as humans in the damage that it can bring. And conversely, quality sleep is the reverse. So we wanted our participants to go for about 7 hours at least a night. Obviously, we can't make people sleep in our study, but we actually had our nutrition team, members of our nutrition team here, work with our participants through the study and give them sleep hygiene tips, just kind of rally around basic stuff. Is your room dark? Is your partner snoring? Is there a dog in your bed? Is it too hot? Just those basic tips to support them in getting adequate sleep. So the science on genetic expression and sleep is just really good. The third arm was stress reduction or meditation. We prescribed a twice daily relaxation response protocol. So 10 to 20 minutes twice per day. So a minimum of 20 minutes total daily. Of the many ahas, another one for me was on the clock, looking at biological aging, and the clock that we used, 25% of it responds to glucocorticoids. So stress drives a full 25% of this biological age measurement. It's nuts, Tom. Like, it's crazy how potent stress pushes aging forward. And we see it across the board at all life stages. So we can see in utero stress or early infant or total life stress or PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the stress response pushing biological aging, increasing risk of chronic disease. And I want to say, if we have time, we can talk about it. There's a heritability pattern. So it can change gene expression, from mom to fetus in utero, but even previous generations, this can influence. However, so here's the good news. Yeah, stress can drive forward biological aging. Boom, it's there. In fact, there was just a study published early this year in the journal Aging, where we published ours, looking at just this sort of in utero stress exposure. When mom had adverse childhood experiences, so long before she was pregnant, she had gene expression changes that then influenced offspring and made those kids age inappropriately faster. So it's all over the place. But thank God, I want to just say, important is there are things that we can do about it. And that's where this meditation comes in. Of course, thinking about our diet and lifestyle and all of the components to set us up. But one meditation, so when they look at epigenetic expression, they showed just one meditation event had favorable changes to gene expression. So it's, for me, it doesn't mean I have to climb up the mountain to the monastery and sit in silence for the next 20 years to reap the benefits of meditation. One meditation event actually favorably changed expression. However, practiced meditators are biologically younger. So the lesson on gene expression is that, yep, anything that we make towards the right direction is going to help us and not harm us. And we need to hang in there also. We need to do the best to hang in there also. And so the science on meditation or Tai Chi or yoga, you know, and favorable epigenetic expression, including biological ages, is really pretty good.
That's really marvelous information. And it's not extremely difficult to sit quiet for 10 minutes twice a day.
Or start, you know, as I wrote in the book, just do a minute. There's an app that I love, the Healthy Minds app out of the University of Wisconsin. Actually, one of their guys spoke at our annual conference, the Institute for Functional Medicine's annual conference last year. It's a free app. You can just download it for free. And they've got 1 minute meditations. They've got meditations when you're exercising. They have meditations when you're commuting. I mean, I'm not working for them or anything like that, but I've kind of fallen in love with the app. He said at the conference, Tom, he's like, you know, we would never leave our house without brushing and flossing. We would never leave our house with bad breath. You know, so we have this attachment to oral hygiene. Who's paying attention to brain hygiene? You know, we can leave our home. Often we do, right? With insane mind. So
Yeah.
it just really put it into perspective. Like, we'll brush our teeth, but we're not paying attention to our brain health. And I think they're kind of pulling the branch down and making it doable for all of us, regardless of how busy we are.
You know, there was an exercise that was our friend, Dr. Pedram Shojai, wrote a book of 365 exercises.
Yeah.
And the first one, the very first one, was set your alarm for 1 hour. When the alarm goes off, just pause with what you're doing and take 5 deep breaths. That's all, just 5 deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in. And do that 5 times. Then go back to what you're doing. So if you're driving, just turn the radio down for a moment and 5 breaths in, 5 breaths out. If you're working at your computer, just close your eyes, 5 breaths in, 5 breaths out, and set the alarm for an hour. Every hour you do this. And I promise you, within 1 day of doing this, you feel different.
Yeah.
You can tell that 30 seconds of every hour makes such a difference. So the 1 minute meditation that you're referring to makes so much sense to me. Because I tried his exercise and it made a difference. It was quite noticeable.
I'm sure. Yeah.
5 breaths, just 5 breaths.
It's amazing.
We
Yeah.
have a few questions. Madchen is asking, in the eggs, are the yolks donors? Because egg whites raise my TPO antibodies.
Yeah. So the important nutrient choline is in the yolk. There are other sources of choline mentioned, so you don't need to rely on eggs. They just happen to be a particular rich source, but they are a common allergen. So, you know, you can lean on other sources, or you can just consider getting a choline supplement.
Right. That's why we put 2 egg yolks in Marzi's coffee every morning, is for the choline, and it has been a contributor to the abundant breast milk that she has produced in the first year of life for Gio, why he's so big and strong and bright-eyed. You know, it's a very strong contributor to that. And I was thinking about this now, you know, and Gio's been eating everything we give him. He eats what we eat since he was about 4 months old. You know, we just put a little of everything there. And he's got a preference now for meats. He really likes meatballs. He takes a meatball, he just like this, you know, he just chewing it all over his face.
Yeah.
That's the funniest thing. But,
That's so funny.
but in the last few weeks, he hasn't been too much into vegetables. And so what we've done is we've made vegetable smoothies in the blender, and then we put them in little ice cube trays. And he's teething, you know, he's in the process of teething. So we give him these little ice cubes of vegetable smoothie, and he just loves them. So he'll get 2 or 3 of those a day, and he's getting his vegetables, all the fiber, everything, and you know, it's numbing the discomfort that he's having with his teething. So you think of ways to make these things work, right?
I remember it well. It wasn't that long ago. I was with you. Pretty soon he's going to get really picky. But you'll go
Thanks
through
very
that.
much.
Well, I remember thinking I was so impressed with my daughter's ability. Her first food was curry, and then she would eat broccoli rabe like she was Italian. And now she's 4 and she's just like, Mom, oh. So you have to just get more creative, and it's just really funny. My sister-in-law said to me, I'm so glad she's so picky now, Kara, because God, I was getting really jealous. But you just have to always think, you just have to think of and get more creative in how you kind of sneak it in and help them keep eating right. But definitely my understanding is, and you will know this better than I, but I think introducing them to that broad palette as you've done from 4 months is just the way to set, even if they go through their finicky pace, they'll come back. Their taste buds will have that information. You're probably setting it epigenetically. I would imagine you have to be making some kind of an impact there.
Right, I would think so. And we're making sure that the vast majority of what Gio's getting on his plate is prebiotic also. So we're building the diversity of his microbiome. I'm really looking forward to this because, unfortunately, Gio was born by traumatic C-section. We had planned a beautiful home birth, but we couldn't happen. And so, it worked. But we all know about C-section babies and that their microbiome is altered. So my geekiness, I actually am so grateful that we did this. When Marzi's due date was here, I did a little swab of the vaginal canal to find out what's the environment like there of the probiotics the baby's about to get. And when her water broke, I captured a little of the water to see what's in the amniotic fluid. And then when Gio was born, we got his first poop that came at day 3. And I sent those 3 samples off to the lab in Norway. And the result is we've got this, here's what the environment was like that he could have gotten from the vaginal canal and the amniotic fluid. And then here's what he's got because he wasn't born down the vaginal canal. And we all know that the microbiome of C-section babies is more similar to the environment they're born in, the bacteria in the emergency room or in the operating room. And now we're about to do another test to see what happens at 1 year, because we've done this whole year focusing on prebiotics and probiotics to see if we can produce that this baby's microbiome will be somewhat similar to a natural childbirth baby and not have deficits. So our fingers are crossed and we'll see, but I think I'm feeling very confident that we're in the right direction on that.
Yeah, and if he's healthy and he's strong and he's not like really rashy and colicky, etc.,
none of it.
I mean, see, thank God we have C-section, thank God when we need it.
You've got to be prepared. If you're pregnant now, you just need to be prepared for the option you don't want.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
All the time, we had our bag all prepared in case we had to go to the hospital. So Marzi had some clothes in there and clothes for the baby, and I had snacks. So we were prepared, and thank God we just grabbed the bag when we went out the door.
Yeah.
So we didn't.
That's very, very important. My best girlfriend from my lab days, actually, she's still my best friend, was doing a home birth, and likewise she had to do an emergency C-section, and it was, it's traumatic, and she's recovered and her child is healthy and fabulous, but you're right, having a little bit of awareness of that as a possibility, I think will set you up for surviving it.
Agreed. And it's the same awareness when you're going for a younger you. By the way, Dr. Kara's book is Younger You. We'll put the link in here. It's on Amazon now, and so you can get it there. And it's fabulous. It's just a fabulous book. And if you have been enjoying the way that she thinks and the way that she communicates, you're going to drool when you read the book. You're just going to drool. So I request everyone go out there and order the book. Let's support this woman and her world and what she's doing, because she's carrying a message out that's critically important for all of us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really a
Thanks,
pleasure.
everybody.
Thank you so much, Karen. Happy holidays to you, and happy holidays to everyone out there. I hope that this is a glorious season for you, and that you remember those who love you and those that you love, and reach out to someone who you haven't talked to in a while. Just reach out and say hello and say, you know, happy holidays. And once again, you've heard me say this many times, don't ever talk about social distancing. It's utter nonsense. Physical distancing may be necessary, but don't disconnect from your social network, especially at this time of year. If you've got some aunts or uncles who might be alone, reach out, you know, send them a message, give them a phone call. It's like when you're driving down the highway and you come up to the toll booth, when you pay for the toll, you say, I'm paying for the car behind me too. And then you drive away. You just know that person's going to go, what? What? Right? And it's going to change their day, right? So change the days of, for someone around you. And thank you all so very much. Thanks, Kara, once again.
Yes, it was really nice. Thanks.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.